Welcome back to Trump Watch. The Trump administration is inching closer towards imposing tariffs on imported semiconductors and the pharmaceutical products. U.S. trade officials have launched a probe into pharma and semiconductor industries before taking a decision on potential tariffs. Currently, India charges a 10% tariff on pharma imports from the U.S. America does not charge any tariff on pharma imports from India. Just to give you a sense on why is U.S. important for Indian pharma companies. Top pharma companies on an average have a 30 to 40% exposure to the U.S. India exported pharma products worth $7.6 billion to the U.S. in 2023. That brings us to the big question. Will pharma tariffs be a bitter pill for the Indian pharma industry to swallow? Analysts believe that India pharma companies will aim to pass on the increased cost to consumers. We'll discuss the impact of the potential tariffs on India in just a bit. But first, let's also listen in to Donald Trump doubling down on pharma and the semiconductor sector and hinting at some relief for automakers.
We don't make our own drugs, our own pharmaceuticals. We don't make our own drugs anymore. The drug companies are in Ireland and they're in lots of other places, China. And all I have to do is impose a tariff. The more, the faster they move in. The higher the tariff, is very serious. It's inversely proportional. The higher the tariff, the faster they come. And yeah, we're going to be doing that. That's going to be like we have on cars. We have, as you know, a 25% tariff on cars. We have a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum, and that's what that category fits right now. I'm looking at something to help some of the car companies where they're switching to parts that were made in Canada, Mexico, and other places, and they need a little bit of time because they're going to make them here.
Joining me now is Ashok Chandak, President of the Indian Electronics and Semiconductor Association, Kewal, Handa, President at Samarth, Lifesciences, and former MD of Pfizer India. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Mr. Handa, in FY24, US accounted for $8.7 billion of total $27.9 billion pharma exports that he had. 30% of India's pharmaceutical exports go to the United States. How badly are we going to be impacted in case these pharma tariffs, as Donald Trump has promised, will kick in?
I think if you take two statements, the one now you have just displayed it, the other one when he said that the administration is looking at a potential tariff in pharmaceuticals in near future and not in distant past. So he's very clear that there would be some tariff. Currently, we are enjoying no tariff. And for the imports of US products in India, pharmaceutical products, there is a tariff around about 11%. So my best case is 10% to 11% tariff. And the worst scenario would be around 25% tariff. So in between, based on how we negotiate and what is the bilateral negotiation is, that tariff would be levied. But let me tell you, the pharmaceutical industry is going to be very tough for him to levy huge tariffs. The reason is very big, simple. US is facing a great challenge of shortages of products. There are almost about more than 300 products which are shortage in US. And at this scenario, when the products are shortages and the delivery is going to be uncertain, and 80% of raw material in the pharmaceutical products are being imported by US, levying a tariff and then being a reciprocal tariff by the other countries. For example, Europe is exporting almost about $120 billion to US. They have already hinted that they will do a reciprocal tariff. So it's going to be a war. So he is cautious about that. And therefore, I feel the tariff on pharmaceutical would be very marginal.
All right. So you expect only a marginal tariff on the pharmaceutical sector. The other condition that he is trying to impose on the likes of Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, Eli Lilly. He wants all these companies to manufacture more in America, and even Indian companies. He's saying you need to manufacture more. Do you think all of that can be done? Because manufacturing capacities are built over years. India is a large supplier of generics to the US. Can those things be changed? Do Indian pharma companies either have the capacity or those plans to set up shop in the US?
So companies like Pfizer and Eli Lilly have already committed that they will shift the manufacturing in US. So there is a strong commitment from multinational companies. Now coming to India, there are already companies like Zydus, Dr. Reddy, Sun Pharma, Lupin. They already have a base in US. Now they have to scale up that base. And I think it would be very wise to do so, given the fact that these tariffs are going to stay, for a longer period of time. But somebody new who want to enter a new green field in US is going to take time, maybe 2 or 3 years. But let's see how it phase out, what type of tariffs are there, what is the advantage post tariff, and how much is the price that you need to pass on, and how much you can retain. I think that becomes very critical to take a decision whether you want to set up a plant or you don't want to set up a plant. But those who already have a plant, I think for them, Trump may also give some more incentives in domestic US market and would be much wiser to have a closer look at setting up additional facilities in US.
Right. Let me go across to Mr. Chandak. Mr. Chandak, semiconductors, again, a big issue. There was a relief for electronic and smartphone and computer imports into US last week. But on semiconductors, both Harbert Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, and the President have said semiconductor tariffs are coming. How do you expect India to be impacted in that supply chain? Mr. Chandak, you're on mute.
Sorry. I would say both semiconductors and electronics would go hand in hand, as there is a dependence of electronics on the semiconductors clearly. And the current exemption is more of a short term, actually. The underlying thread is pretty clear. It's the America first and manufacturing need to move there, actually. That's going on. I will deal both the topics in a short way, in a crisp way. First of all, on semiconductors, it is clearly understood that it's a critical importance for every country, including US, and being a foundation technology. It has to be dealt a bit carefully. Second point is in a world semiconductor market, the US companies already have more than 50% market share, but most of that is manufactured outside of US. There is a limited amount of manufacturing which is happening in US right now, and something is import. Mostly it's import. From India perspective, in the short term, I don't see any major issue, even if any tariffs are imposed, because we do not make, as of now, much of a semiconductor manufacturing. And number two, we are still a net importer, and most of those US companies are importing from the hubs or exporting to US from their hubs in Asia. So the disruption of supply chain, which is likely to happen actually, in case the tariffs are imposed on some other countries, which includes the Taiwan, Korea, Japan, China, while India would remain relatively unimpacted. But I do see an opportunity for India over here because the India OSATs, as many of the industry people, including you, are aware, that the India is expanding its semiconductor manufacturing with the outsourced semiconductor assembly test operations OSATs by Micron, Tata, Keynes, and other people. And there is a fab coming from Tata. So once these are operational, let's say by end of the year or next year onwards, we also get an opportunity to export to US, because this $500 billion bucket, which has been identified as a wish list between two countries for a trade import-export, something need to fill up that. And electronics and semiconductors are a good candidate to fill those buckets of $500 billion trade agreements. Number two, the global semiconductor industry is also expanding very fast. Last year, it's already $656 billion, and it's still growing, actually. So as this keeps growing, and even if there is a manufacturing which shifts to US, no country would be 100% self-sufficient in semiconductors, particularly, and also electronics. So there would always be a situation where US will also be an importer of electronics and semiconductors. And with our current policies and step up which is happening, I would see that India would get good opportunity to export to US. So I think we should stay tuned, not to get too much worried about these tariff topics. Those are coming actually, and there are some surprises, some changes which are happening. We already have a robust the policy framework which has been defined by the central government, and I call as a winning trio, which is the PLI on electronic components, PLI on electronics manufacturing, and a Semicon India program. All three put together.
Right.
Additionally, the state governments, there are about 7 state governments, those have rolled out very lucrative policies at the state level, which is creating a lot of momentum of setting up the plants and manufacturing activity. So all these things should help us actually. In fact, to increase our trade with United States. And also importing is not a problem because currently our import from US on semiconductor is hardly $4
Mr.
billion.
Chandak,
Pretty much.
what would your recommendation be for the India-US bilateral trade agreement?
My view would be in that there are two factors to be looked into. Create more interdependence because, as I said, electronics and semiconductor has become really a global business where no single country would be fully independent or self-sufficient. So create that interdependence of supply chain between two countries, and there are several companies actually that are operating in that direction. Then on electronics side, I would call there is a category of manufacturing called electronics manufacturing services, EMS. And there are global players such as Foxconn, Jabil, Flextronics, Sanmina, and others, and Indian players such as Dixon, Keynes, Sirma SGS, Avalon, and others. They have a wonderful opportunity to quickly scale up the electronics manufacturing activities, looking at the policies, and start working towards the export to US, and also import to US should not be a problem. So these are the two things which we need to add up over there. OSAT I already mentioned. And one my point is actually the BTA which is going on, you already mentioned some time ago in the program, the bilateral trade agreement is gaining momentum. It's one of the most constructive dialogue which I would say I would have seen in the recent times. So earlier we do the BTA is better, no need to be desperate, but earlier we do is better for both the countries because both countries would like to show some outcomes to their country.